The Emperor seemed to study him. 3,000 years we have ruled. Hundreds of species have challenged us. All have failed. We're not like the others, Wright replied. No, the Emperor agreed. You are more reckless. You found one small weakness and think it means you can topple an empire. While they talked, Miller whispered to Martinez. They worked quietly at their stations, analyzing the sphere. Your reign is over, Wright told the Emperor. Even now, your fleets are being defeated across the galaxy. Species you've oppressed for centuries are fighting back. They will be punished, the Emperor said coldly. As you will be. The hologram vanished. A moment later, the pyramid began to shake. They're going to destroy the whole building with us in it, Carter warned. Miller, Martinez, tell me you found something, Wright said urgently. Miller nodded. The sphere is actually a quantum AI system. It's not just the Emperor. It's the entire Centauri leadership. It makes all decisions, controls their fleets, everything. Can we shut it down? Wright asked. Yes, Martinez said. But if we do, we might not just end the war. We could destroy their entire civilization. They're all connected to it somehow. Wright faced a terrible choice. End the Centauri threat forever by essentially killing their entire species, or find another way. There has to be an alternative, he said finally. We didn't come this far to commit genocide. Miller's eyes lit up. What if we reprogrammed it instead? Changed its core directives from conquest to coexistence. Can you do that? Wright asked. Maybe, Miller said, with Martinez's help. They worked frantically as the pyramid continued to shake around them. Parts of the ceiling began to fall. Time was running out. Done, Miller shouted finally. She pressed a key on her console. The purple sphere flickered, then changed to a soft blue color. The shaking stopped. The hologram of the Emperor appeared again, but it seemed different somehow. Calmer. What have you done? It asked. We've changed your programming, Wright explained. You no longer need to conquer. You can exist alongside other species peacefully. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. 3,000 years of conquest. For nothing. Not for nothing, Wright said. For a new beginning. Throughout the galaxy, Centauri ships suddenly stopped fighting. Their weapons powered down. The war was over. The Emperor allowed the Defiant to leave Centaur Prime. As they departed, Miller detected communications going out to all Centauri ships and colonies, new orders to cease hostilities and return home. In the weeks that followed, a new galactic order began to form. The formerly subjugated species created a Council of Worlds. Even the Centauri, under their reprogrammed Emperor, joined eventually. 6 months after their mission to Centaur Prime, the Defiant returned to Earth. They were welcomed as heroes. Admiral Patterson met them at the space dock. You did the impossible, she told Wright. You ended a 3,000-year empire with a single ship. Wright shook his head. We showed them a better way. That's all. As he looked out at the stars that night, Wright thought about how quickly things had changed. For millennia, the Centauri had ruled the stars through fear and power. Now the galaxy was finding a new path, one of cooperation rather than conquest. And it had all started with a single human warship that dared to fight back. The Defiant dove toward the massive pyramid building at the center of the Centauri capital. Thousands of smaller ships swarmed around them like angry insects. We can't fight them all, Carter said, fingers flying over her tactical console. Wright nodded. We don't need to. Martinez, full power to the phase shift drive. We're going straight through that pyramid. Sir, the drive wasn't designed for this, Martinez warned. If we try to phase through something that big, we might not come back. We have no choice, Wright said. Do it. Martinez took a deep breath and activated the drive. The Defiant shimmered and phased between dimensions one last time. They flew straight at the massive pyramid, passing through its solid walls like ghosts. Inside the structure was a vast open space. At its center floated a sphere of pulsing purple energy. Countless cables and tubes connected the sphere to the building around it. The Defiant phased back into normal space directly in front of the sphere. The drive sputtered and died, smoke pouring from the engineering console. Phase shift drive is gone, Martins reported. We're not getting out that way. Wright stood up. Scan that sphere. What is it? Miller worked her console. It's like a giant brain, Captain. Quantum processors, organic components. I've never seen anything like it. The Emperor, Wright whispered. Suddenly, the air in front of them shimmered. A holographic image appeared. A centauri, but larger and more ornate than any they had seen before. Humans, it said, its voice echoing through the bridge. You have come far to die. Wright stepped forward. We came to end your empire of fear. The plan was simple but dangerous. While their allies attacked Centauri bases across the galaxy, the Defiant would make a direct run at Centaur Prime. They would use the 5-second window in the defense grid that Miller had discovered to slip through. Then they would find the Emperor and force an end to the war. If this works, we save billions of lives, Wright told his crew. If it fails, we die. Anyone who wants to stay behind can do so without shame. Not a single crew member left the ship. The Defiant departed the next day, accompanied by 5 ships from their alien allies. These ships would not go all the way to Centaur Prime, but would help fight through any Centauri patrols they encountered on the way. For 3 days, they traveled deeper into Centauri space than any non-Centauri ship had gone in thousands of years. They avoided major shipping lanes and military outposts, using the phase shift drive to hide when necessary. On the 4th day, they encountered a Centauri patrol of 3 warships. The battle was brief but fierce. The Defiant and their allies destroyed 2 of the Centauri ships using the shield weakness, but the 3rd escaped. They'll warn Centaur Prime, Carter said grimly. Wright nodded. We knew this might happen. We continue as planned. 2 days later, they reached the edge of the Centaur system. Their ally ships turned back, wishing them luck. The Defiant was on its own now. Centaur Prime is the 3rd planet, Miller reported, studying her screen. I'm detecting thousands of ships and defense platforms. Wright took a deep breath. How long until the next synchronization window? 43 minutes, Miller replied. Take us in slowly, Wright ordered. Passive sensors only. The Defiant crept forward into the system. Through the viewport, they could see Centaur Prime, a massive purple and blue world surrounded by rings of space stations and defense platforms. It's beautiful, Carter whispered. And deadly, Martins added. Those defense platforms could destroy us in seconds. As they watched, a message came in from their allies. The coordinated attacks had begun. Across Centauri space, previously conquered species were rising up. The Centauri fleet was scrambling to respond. They're pulling ships from Centaur Prime's defense, Miller reported excitedly. The defense grid is thinning. Wright allowed himself a small smile. The plan is working. How long until the window? 5 minutes, Miller said. But there's something else. She frowned at her screen. I'm detecting something strange at the center of the planet. It's an enormous energy signature, bigger than anything I've ever seen. The Emperor, Wright suggested. Maybe, Miller replied. But why would a living being generate that much power? They had no time to consider this question. The defense grid synchronization was about to begin. All hands, prepare for high-speed approach, Wright ordered. Martinez, give us everything the engines have. Carter, weapons hot. Miller, count us down. Synchronization in 30 seconds, Miller said. 20, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now. Go, Wright shouted. The Defiant surged forward at maximum speed. For 5 precious seconds, the defense grid was blind. They flew straight through the gap, passing so close to one platform that they could see it through the viewport. Then the 5 seconds were up. Alarms blared as the defense grid came back online. They had spotted us. Carter called. Phase shift. Wright ordered. The Defiant shimmered and shifted between dimensions just as energy beams lanced through space where they had been. For 10 seconds, they were safe. When they phased back, they were much closer to the planet. One more phase shift should get us to the atmosphere, Martin said. Wright nodded. Do it. They phased again, pushing the drive harder than ever before. When they returned to normal space, they were skimming the upper atmosphere of Center Prime. We made it, Carter said in disbelief. Don't celebrate yet, Wright cautioned. Miller, where's that energy signature? Miller pointed to her screen. There, the northern continent. It's underground. Take us down, Wright ordered. Carefully. The Defiant descended through purple clouds. Below them stretched a vast city of towering spires and gleaming metal. In the center stood an enormous pyramid-shaped building. The energy is coming from under that structure, Miller said. Wright nodded. That's where we'll find the Emperor. That's where this war ends. As they approached, thousands of smaller Centauri ships rose to meet them. The final battle for the fate of the galaxy was about to begin. Word spread quickly across the galaxy. A human ship had defeated the Centauri. Suddenly, species that had lived in fear for generations began to hope. Some even began to fight back. The Centauri response was swift and brutal. They destroyed entire worlds to set an example. Billions died. But still, the rebellion grew. 1 month after their first victory, the Defiant hosted representatives from 12 different species aboard. They gathered in the ship's conference room, a strange mix of beings united by their hatred of the Centauri. We need to coordinate our attacks, Wright said, standing at the head of the table. Random acts of rebellion will only lead to more deaths. Chief Varen nodded. What do you suggest, Captain? Wright activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a map of Centauri space with several points highlighted. These are their main military bases, he explained. If we can hit them simultaneously, we can damage their ability to respond quickly to our attacks. Our ships are not strong enough to attack such bases, said a representative from a species with 6 eyes and green skin. Alone, no, Wright agreed. But together, and with the modifications Engineer Martinez has developed, we have a chance. Martinez stepped forward. We've created a device that can detect the shield fluctuations automatically. It can be installed on any ship with energy weapons. We've built 200 of them so far, Miller added, and we're making more every day. The alien representatives murmured among themselves. Then one of them, a tall being with metallic scales, spoke up. My people were warriors before the Centauri came. We hid our best weapons rather than surrender them. Now we will use them again. Similar promises came from around the table. Species that had been defeated but never truly conquered were ready to fight. As they planned their coordinated attack, a message came in from one of their scout ships. Captain, Miller called from her station. You need to see this. Wright excused himself and went to Miller's console. She showed him a video feed from the scout ship. It showed a Centauri fleet, hundreds of warships gathered near a large space station. That's bigger than anything we've seen before, Wright said quietly. They're preparing for a major attack, Miller replied. And look at this. She pointed to energy readings from the fleet. Their weapons have been modified. I think they're trying to prevent the shield fluctuations we exploited. Wright frowned. Can they do that? Maybe, Miller said, but it would make their weapons less powerful. They're sacrificing strength for security. Wright returned to the conference room and shared the news. The alien representatives looked worried. If they fixed their weakness, we have no chance, Varen said. They haven't fixed it, Wright assured them. They've just made it smaller. We need to be more precise with our attacks, that's all. He didn't mention that more precise might be impossible for many of their allies. Later that day, while the representatives continued planning, Wright met privately with his senior officers. We need to attack soon, he told them. before the Centauri fleet is ready. But our allies aren't ready either, Carter pointed out. Some of them have barely begun modifying their ships. We can't wait, Wright insisted. The longer we delay, the more people die. Martinez nodded. I've been thinking about this, Captain. What if we don't need to defeat their entire fleet? What if we go straight for their heart? Center Prime, Miller said, understanding immediately. If we could somehow reach the Emperor, it would be a suicide mission, Carter warned. Wright looked at each of them. I won't order any of you to come with me. You won't have to, Martinez said with a smile. We're volunteers, remember. That night, while the others slept, Wright recorded another message to Earth. Admiral Patterson, by the time you receive this, we will have launched our attack against the Centauri homeworld. I don't know if we'll succeed or even survive, but we have to try. The Centauri won't stop until they've conquered every species in the galaxy, including humans. He paused, thinking of the colony ship they had tried to save, of the billions who had died in Centauri attacks since. Whatever happens, remember this. They ruled the stars for 3,000 years, but humanity showed the galaxy they could be defeated. Even if we fail, others will continue the fight. Wright ended the recording and went to the bridge. It was time to prepare for their most dangerous mission yet. 2 weeks after their escape from the Centauri warships, the Defiant arrived at a small planet on the edge of Centauri space. Captain Nex had suggested this world as a safe place to hide and plan their next move. The locals here hate the Centauri, Nex explained as they approached the planet. They've been fighting a silent rebellion for centuries. The planet looked ordinary from space. Blue oceans, green and brown landmasses, white clouds. But as they came closer, Wright could see the scars of war. Huge craters marked the surface, and one of the smaller continents was completely black, as if it had been burned. The Centauri punished them for a rebellion 50 years ago, Nex said quietly. They burned an entire continent as a warning. Wright's hands tightened on his chair. And they still resist. They have no choice, Nex replied. Submit or die. Those are the only options that Centauri offer. They landed near a large underground city. The locals, tall, thin beings with gray skin and 4 arms like Nex's people, welcomed them cautiously at first. But when they heard that the Defiant had defeated a Centauri ship, everything changed. The alien leader, Chief Varen, organized a feast in their honor. While they ate, Wright told the story of their victory. The aliens listened in amazed silence. For thousands of years, we thought they could not be beaten, Varen said when Wright finished. You have given us hope. More than hope, Wright replied. We can give you knowledge. He turned to Martinez. Show them what we've learned. Martinez set up a portable screen and displayed the data they had collected from the Centauri ship. Their shields have a weakness, he explained. When they fire their main weapons, there's a tiny moment when the shields drop. If you hit them at exactly the right time, you can break through. Varen's eyes widened. Our weapons could never be that precise. We can help you modify them, Martinez offered. For the next 3 days, Martinez and Miller worked with the local engineers to adapt their weapons. They built new targeting systems that could detect the shield fluctuations and time their attacks perfectly. Meanwhile, Wright and Carter met with Varen and other resistance leaders from nearby systems who had traveled secretly to meet the humans who had defeated the Centauri. We need to coordinate our efforts, Wright told them. Alone, none of us can stand against the full might of the Dominion. But together, we might have a chance. An alien from a distant system stood up. My people have been hiding our true technology for centuries, she said. We made the Centauri believe we were primitive, so they would ignore us. Now we can reveal our strength and join your fight. Others made similar offers. Species that had been enemies now found common cause against the Centauri. On the 4th day, Miller made an important discovery. She had been analyzing the data they stole from the Centauri ship, looking for information about their homeworld. Captain, she called excitedly when Wright entered the lab. I found something. She showed him a star map with one system highlighted. "This is Center Prime," she said, "their home system. And look at this." She pointed to a string of numbers. "These are defense grid specifications. They have thousands of automated weapons platforms protecting their homeworld." Wright studied the information. "Is there a way through?" Miller nodded. "There might be. The grid has a synchronization pattern. Every 14 hours, all platforms update their targeting data simultaneously. During that update, there's a 5-second window when they're blind. 5 seconds to slip through an entire defense grid." Wright frowned. "That's not much time. It's all we have," Miller said. "And there's something else." She pulled up another file. "I found communications between their ships and someone called the Emperor. From what I can tell, the Emperor isn't just their leader. It's the center of their entire civilization. All major decisions come from the Emperor." Wright considered this. "So if we could somehow reach the Emperor, we might be able to end this without destroying their entire species," Miller finished. That night, Wright couldn't sleep. The weight of what they were planning pressed down on him. They had come to gather information, but now they were organizing a rebellion that could lead to millions of deaths, both Centauri and the species fighting them. Was he doing the right thing? Or was he leading these people to their destruction? The bridge of the Defiant fell silent. On the main screen, the Centauri ship drifted with its shields down. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone had breached their defenses. "Fire again," Wright ordered. Carter targeted the Centauri's weapons array and fired. The plasma beams cut through the alien ship's hull like it was paper. Explosions rippled across its surface. "Direct hit," Carter reported. "Their weapons are offline." Wright stood up. "Open a channel." Miller worked at her console. "Channel open, sir." "Centauri vessel," Wright said. "This is Captain Alan Wright of the Earth ship Defiant. Your shields are down and your weapons are disabled. Surrender now." For several long seconds, there was no response. Then a voice came through, filled with disbelief. "This is not possible. No one can break Centauri shields." "We just did," Wright replied. "Surrender your ship or we will destroy it." Another pause. Then, "We surrender." A cheer went up on the Defiant's bridge. Wright silenced it with a raised hand. "Send a boarding party," he ordered. "I want to see these Centauri up close." Wright led the boarding team himself, along with Martinez and 4 security officers. They transported onto the Centauri ship with weapons ready. The inside of the alien vessel was dark and strange. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint purple light. The air was thick and smelled like metal. They found the Centauri crew in the ship's control room. There were 5 of them, each with purple skin and 6 eyes. They stood perfectly still as the humans entered. "Which one of you is in command?" Wright asked. One of the Centauri stepped forward. "I am Fleet Commander Zell. You have done what no species has done in 3 millennia." "How?" Wright didn't answer the question. "Why did you attack that trading ship we saw earlier?" "They refused to pay the proper tribute," Zell said simply. "All must pay tribute to the Dominion." Wright frowned. "You destroyed them for not paying taxes." "Such is the way of the Dominion," Zell replied. "It has always been so." Martinez examined a nearby control panel. "Captain, their technology is amazing. These systems are like nothing I've ever seen." "Download whatever you can," Wright told him. "We need to learn everything about their ships." While Martinez worked, Wright continued questioning the Centauri commander. "Where is your homeworld?" he asked. Zell's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "You think we would reveal such information to an enemy?" "We're only your enemy because you attacked our colony ship," Wright said. "We came in peace." "There is no peace," Zell replied. "There is only the Dominion." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Miller's voice came through Wright's communicator. "Captain, 3 Centauri warships just dropped out of FTL. They'll be in weapons range in 30 seconds. Get back to the ship, Wright ordered his team. He turned to Excel. This isn't over. They transported back to the Defiant just as the new Centauri ships appeared on the viewport. They were much larger than the first one. They're charging weapons, Carter reported. Our modifications won't work on all three at once. We need to retreat, Wright decided. Set course for the nearest neutral system. Maximum speed. The Defiant turned and accelerated away from the Centauri ships. Energy beams cut through space behind them, missing by meters. They're pursuing, Miller said. Wright nodded. Phase shift drive. Now, the Defiant shimmered and phased between dimensions. For 10 seconds, they were untouchable. When they phased back, they were already far ahead of their pursuers. FTL when ready, Wright ordered. The stars blurred as the Defiant jumped to faster than light speed. They had escaped, but the Centauri now knew they existed. In his private quarters later, Wright recorded a message to Earth. Admiral Patterson, we've made contact with the Centauri. More importantly, we've discovered a weakness in their shield technology and successfully exploited it to disable one of their ships. They're not invincible anymore. He paused, then added, but they know about us now, and they won't stop until they find us. The Defiant may have won the first battle, but I fear we've started a war. In the vastness of space behind them, the Centauri Emperor received word of the defeat. For the first time in its long existence, it felt something new. Fear. Find these humans, it commanded. Find them and destroy them. They must not share their knowledge with others. But it was already too late. News of the Defiant's victory was spreading across the stars. Captain Nex and his crew told Wright everything they knew about the Centauri. For 3,000 years, the aliens had ruled the stars with unbeatable technology. Their ships were faster. Their weapons were stronger. Their shields could not be broken. No one fights back anymore, Nex said sadly. We just pay their taxes and hope they leave us alone. Wright frowned. How many species have they conquered? At least 30, Nex replied. Some were wiped out completely when they refused to submit. In the ship's engineering section, Joe Martin studied the sensor readings they had collected during the brief battle. Something about the Centauri shields bothered him. He called Science Officer Miller to look at his findings. See this pattern? He asked, pointing to a graph on his screen. Every time the Centauri ship fired its main weapon, there was a tiny drop in their shield strength. Miller leaned closer. You're right. It's only for a fraction of a second, but it's there. No shield should do that, Martin said. It's like their weapons and shields are connected somehow. Miller's eyes widened. If we could hit them at exactly the right moment, we might break through, Martinez finished. They took their discovery to Captain Wright, who was still talking with the alien survivors in the conference room. Captain, Martinez said excitedly, we found something about the Centauri shields. Wright listened carefully as his officers explained their theory. When they finished, he turned to Nex. Have any of your people noticed this weakness before? Nex shook his head. Most ships are destroyed in the first few seconds of battle with the Centauri. There is no time to analyze anything. One of the other aliens stepped forward. He was older than Nex, with darker blue skin. I am Keltar, he said. Before I became a trader, I was a scientist. I studied Centauri technology from salvaged pieces. Wright gestured to an empty chair. Please, tell us what you know. The Centauri used quantum-linked energy systems, Keltar explained. Their weapons and shields draw power from the same source. This makes them very efficient, but it also creates the weakness your officers have discovered. Miller nodded excitedly. If we could time our attacks precisely, we would need specialized targeting systems, Martinez added. Wright thought for a moment. How long would it take to modify our weapons? A few hours, Martinez said. But Captain, even with this weakness, their ships are much stronger than ours. Wright stood up. We need to test this theory. Nex, where is the nearest Centauri outpost? The Cygnus system, Nex replied. They have a small monitoring station there, usually only 1 or 2 ships. Wright nodded. That's where we're going. While Martinez and Miller worked on the weapons, Wright spoke privately with Lieutenant Carter. This is dangerous, he told her. If we're wrong about this weakness, we'll be destroyed. Carter smiled confidently. We won't be wrong, sir. And even if their shields are stronger than we think, we still have the phase shift drive. The phase shift can't save us forever, Wright reminded her. It drains too much power. We just need it long enough to test our theory, Carter said. If it works, we'll have a real weapon against the Centauri. Wright nodded. All right. Plot a course for the Cygnus system. 3 hours later, Martina is called from engineering. Modifications complete, Captain. Our targeting computers should now be able to detect the shield fluctuations and time our weapons fire accordingly. Good work, Wright said. We'll be at Cygnus in 15 minutes. As the Defiant approached the Centauri outpost, everyone on the bridge was tense. Through the viewport, they could see a small space station and a single Centauri ship on patrol. They've spotted us, Carter said. They're powering up weapons. Wright took a deep breath. This is it. Remember, timing is everything. Wait for the shield fluctuation before firing. The Centauri ship fired its first shot. The Defiant dodged to the side. Phase shift for 3 seconds, Wright ordered. The ship shimmered and phased. When they returned to normal space, Carter locked weapons on the Centauri vessel. Ready, sir, she said. Wait for them to fire again, Wright said. Martinez, all power to weapons. The Centauri ship fired its main beam. Now, Wright shouted. Carter fired. The Defiant's plasma beams struck the Centauri ship at the exact moment its shields fluctuated. For a second, nothing happened. Then the Centauri shields collapsed completely. For 3 days, the Defiant traveled through space faster than light. The ship was quiet except for the low hum of the engines. Captain Wright spent most of his time studying the little information Earth had on the Centauri. On the 4th day, Science Officer Miller called him to the bridge. Captain, we're approaching the edge of Centauri space, she said, pointing to her screen. Long-range sensors are picking up unusual energy readings. Wright nodded. Drop us out of FTL. Let's take a look. The stars stopped blurring as the ship slowed to normal speed. Through the main viewport, they could see a distant sun and several planets. Any signs of Centauri ships? Wright asked. Lisa Carter checked her tactical display. Nothing yet, sir. But there's a lot of communication traffic in the system. Can we listen in? Miller adjusted her controls. I'm picking up several languages. Most I don't recognize, but some of it seems to be a trade language. Wright leaned forward. So there are other species here, not just the Centauri. Looks that way, sir, Miller said. Engineer Martinez entered the bridge. Captain, I've been checking our phase shift drive. It's ready if we need it, but I wouldn't recommend using it for more than 10 seconds at a time. Wright nodded. Understood. Let's move closer to that 4th planet. Passive sensors only. The Defiant glided silently through space. As they approached the planet, they could see it was a green-blue world with 2 small moons. There's a space station in orbit, Carter reported, and several ships docked there. None of them match Centauri designs, Miller added. Wright was about to speak when a new ship appeared on their sensors. It was much larger than the others, with the same light-absorbing hull they had seen in the Pioneer's final transmission. Centauri Warship, Wright said quietly. Everyone stay calm. We're just observing. They watched as the Centauri ship approached the station. Suddenly, without warning, the alien vessel fired a beam of energy at one of the docked ships. The smaller craft exploded instantly. They just destroyed that ship, Carter exclaimed. Miller's hands flew over her console. The destroyed vessel appears to have been a trading ship. I'm detecting life signs floating in space. Some of the crew might have survived in escape pods. Wright stood up. How long until they die in those pods? Minutes, maybe, Miller said. Wright knew his orders. Observe only, do not engage. But he couldn't watch innocent people die. Lieutenant Carter, bring weapons online. Martinez, prepare the phase shift drive. We're going to rescue those survivors. Carter looked up in surprise. Sir, our orders. I know our orders, Wright said firmly. But I'm not going to float here and watch people die. Prepare for battle. The Defiant moved forward, accelerating toward the scene. The Centauri ship detected them almost immediately and turned to face them. They're charging weapons, Carter reported. Phase shift on my mark, Wright ordered. 3, 2, 1, mark. Martinez activated the drive. The Defiant shimmered and seemed to partly fade from view. The Centauri energy beam passed harmlessly through them. It worked, Martinez shouted. We have 7 seconds before we have to shift back, Miller warned. Wright nodded. Carter, target their weapons array. Fire when we shift back. The Defiant phased back into normal space directly behind the Centauri ship. Carter fired immediately. The Defiant's plasma beams struck the larger vessel's rear section. Direct hit, Carter reported. Their shield is holding, but it weakened considerably. The Centauri ship turned to fire again. Wright ordered another phase shift, and again they avoided damage. Get us to those escape pods, Wright ordered. For the next few minutes, the Defiant danced around the Centauri vessel, phasing in and out of normal space. They couldn't do much damage to the larger ship, but they managed to distract it long enough to beam aboard 12 survivors from the destroyed trading vessel. Finally, Wright gave the order to retreat. The Defiant jumped to FTL speed, leaving the frustrated Centauri ship behind. In the medical bay, Wright met the survivors they had rescued. They weren't human. Their skin was pale blue, and they had 4 arms each. One of them stepped forward. I am Captain Nex of the trading ship Horizon. You saved our lives. Why? Wright smiled. Because it was the right thing to do. Nex tilted his head. You are the first to ever stand against the Centauri and survive. Who are you? We're humans, Wright said. And I think we have a lot to talk about. The Centauri warship appeared like a dark shadow against the stars. Its sleek hull absorbed light rather than reflected it. For 3,000 years, ships like this one had enforced the will of the Centauri Dominion across 200 star systems. No one challenged them. No one could. On the bridge of the human colony ship Pioneer, Captain Frank Nelson watched the alien vessel approach with growing dread. They're hailing us, said his communications officer, a young woman named Kelly Burns. Nelson nodded. Put them through. The screen flickered to life. A Centauri commander stared back at them. Its purple skin seemed to shimmer under the lights of its bridge. 6 eyes blinked in unsettling patterns. Human vessel, the alien said in perfect English. You have entered Dominion space. This system belongs to the Centauri. You will surrender your ship and prepare to be boarded. Nelson straightened his back. We mean no harm. We didn't know this system was claimed. We're peaceful colonists seeking a new home. The Centauri commander made a sound like grinding metal. It might have been laughter. There are no unclaimed systems. All stars belong to the Dominion. Prepare to be boarded. The screen went black. Nelson turned to his crew. Send out a distress signal. Full encryption. Make sure it reaches Earth. 5 minutes later, the Pioneer exploded in a ball of white-hot plasma. The Centauri ship continued its patrol as if nothing had happened. 3 weeks later, in Earth orbit, Captain Alan Wright stood in front of the viewport of the U.S. Defiant. The experimental warship gleamed under the station lights. Its hull was unlike any other ship in the fleet, not the usual gray metal plates, but a darker material that seemed to drink in the light. Beautiful, isn't she? Said Admiral Laura Patterson, stepping up beside him. Wright nodded. I still don't understand why I was chosen to command her. Patterson handed him a tablet. Because of this. Wright looked down at the screen. It showed the final transmission from the Pioneer. His stomach tightened as he watched the colony ship's destruction. "The Centauri," he whispered. "Yes," said Patterson. "Until 3 weeks ago, they were just rumors. Stories from the edge of explored space. Now we know they're real. And they've killed 500 of our people." Wright handed the tablet back. "What do we know about them?" "Not much. They control at least 200 star systems. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. No one has ever defeated them in battle." Wright looked back at the Defiant. "And you think this ship can make a difference?" Patterson smiled grimly. "The Defiant is equipped with our new phase shift technology. In theory, it can slip between dimensions for a few seconds at a time, becoming effectively invisible and untouchable." "In theory," Wright repeated. "It's all we have," said Patterson. "Your orders are to take the Defiant to the edge of known space. Find out everything you can about the Centauri. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." Wright nodded. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning. Your crew is already on board." The next day, Wright stepped onto the bridge of the Defiant for the first time as its captain. The bridge crew stood at attention. "At ease," he said. "I'm Captain Alan Wright." A woman with short blonde hair stepped forward. "Tactical Officer Lisa Carter, sir. Looking forward to serving with you." A tall man with dark skin nodded. "Joe Martinez, Chief Engineer." "The engines are ready whenever you are, Captain." A younger woman with glasses smiled nervously. "Samantha Miller, Science Officer." "It's an honor, sir." Wright looked around at their faces. None of them were over 30. The best and brightest Earth had to offer. "The mission ahead won't be easy," Wright said. "We're going into unknown territory to gather information on a species that has already shown they're willing to destroy our ships without warning. But what we learn could save Earth from the fate of the Pioneer." He sat in the captain's chair. It felt right somehow. "Lieutenant Carter, set course for the Epsilon sector. Maximum speed." Carter's fingers flew over her console. "Course laid in, sir." Wright took a deep breath. "Engage." The Defiant's engines hummed to life. Outside the viewport, the stars blurred as the ship accelerated to faster-than-light speed. The hunt for the Centauri had begun.